I drove 6 hours with home-cooked food for my pregnant daughter. Her husband met me in the driveway and said, "No visitors. Doctor's orders." But I saw her watching through the curtains, crying. He took the food, dumped it in the trash, and said, "She's mine now." I left in tears. But I came back with something he never expected. After I left that driveway, I pulled over at a gas station 20 minutes down the road and just sat there in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel. I was shaking. I couldn't cry yet. I couldn't even think straight. He threw away my food like it was trash. Like I was trash. But worse than that, he said she was his now. Like she didn't even belong to herself. Like she was some kind of object. And my daughter, my Jenna, stood behind that window crying, and she couldn't even come out and hug her own mother. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I started going back through every phone call over the last year. The way she'd always defend him. How she'd say, "Craig just wants what's best for me." When I asked about her sounding tired. How she stopped coming home for the holidays. How she didn't come visit when I had the flu and was in the hospital last winter. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was him. He'd been isolating her. Slowly. Cutting me out. Probably cutting out her friends too. That's how controlling men work. I'd seen it at the hospital, in the ER, too many times. They always start the same way, charming, protective, just looking out for their partner. Then the walls close in. Phone access. Finances. Friends. Family. Everything gets taken away, one piece at a time. I didn't know what he was doing behind that front door, but I had a sinking feeling it wasn't good. So I didn't go home. I drove to a little motel on the edge of town and checked in. I sat on that scratchy bedspread, turned off the lights, and stared at the ceiling. I needed to think. I needed a plan. The next morning, I went to a local diner and got coffee and eggs. While I sat there, I made a list in my notebook. Check if Jen is still working, look up South Dakota domestic abuse laws, find out what hospital she's going to call a lawyer. I wasn't playing games. If Jenna was in danger, I was going to do something about it. Craig wanted to treat her like property? He had no idea who he was messing with. I spent the next 2 days quietly gathering information. I found out Jenna wasn't working anymore. Not since the second trimester. Her job at the insurance office said she went on leave suddenly, and they hadn't heard from her since. Her best friend back home, Sarah, said she hadn't responded to texts in over 3 months. Then I called around to a few OBGYN clinics in Sioux Falls, pretending to be a worried mother, and finally one receptionist gave me just enough to confirm Jenna was still scheduled for prenatal visits at a clinic on 43rd Street. That same day, I drove there and parked across the street. I waited for 3 hours until I saw her. She came out of the building wearing a loose blue maternity dress, holding her belly, moving slow. Craig was with her. One hand on her back, guiding her like she was a toddler. He looked around constantly, like he was paranoid. When he opened the car door for her, I saw her wince as she sat down. Not like pregnancy pain. Like something hurt. That's when my chest went cold. I drove straight to a lawyer's office I found on Google. Her name was Tanya Fletcher, and she specialized in family law and abuse cases. I walked in without an appointment and told her everything. She didn't interrupt once. Just listened, nodded, and then leaned forward with her hands folded. "You're not crazy," she said. "This sounds like coercive control. And if she's pregnant and isolated, we need to move fast." She helped me file an anonymous welfare check request through the sheriff's office. But she warned me, if Jenna refused help or denied anything was wrong, there wasn't much they could do yet. So we had to find a way to get Jenna alone. Even just for 10 minutes. The next step? I called Sarah back. Jenna's best friend. We hadn't talked much over the years, but when I told her everything, she jumped on board immediately. "I knew something was wrong with that man," she said. Sarah agreed to come to town that weekend and help me run a distraction. We waited 3 days. Then, early Saturday morning, I followed them to a grocery store. Craig parked near the front. Jenna stayed in the car while he went inside. That was our moment. Sarah walked up from the back lot, pretending to be a stranger who needed directions. She knocked on Craig's window just as he put the car in reverse, forcing him to roll it down. She pointed across the parking lot, made small talk, and stalled him just long enough. I darted across the lot, opened the passenger side door, and slid into the seat next to Jenna. She gasped when she saw me. I grabbed her hand. "Baby, it's me. Just listen, okay? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to say a word. Just blink if you want to leave with me." She blinked. Then she burst into tears. Jenna cried so hard she couldn't breathe. Her whole body was shaking. I held her hand tight, trying to stay calm, even though my heart was racing. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered. "He watches me all the time. He checks my phone. He makes me sleep with the door locked from the outside. I'm so scared, Mom." I had to fight back tears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag her out of that car and run, but we had to be careful. "Okay," I said, my voice low and steady. "You're not going back with him. Not now, not ever." She started to panic. "But he'll find us. He always does. He has cameras in the house, in the car, he checks everything." That's when I realized, this wasn't just emotional abuse. This man had her trapped like a prisoner. I helped her out of the car slowly. Sarah was still keeping Craig distracted on the far side of the lot. I wrapped my arm around Jenna's waist and we headed toward my car, parked by the gas station next door. Every step felt like we were walking through fire. We made it into the car just as Craig turned and noticed us. "Hey!" he yelled across the lot. Jenna jumped. "Drive! Go!" I floored it. He ran after us for a few seconds, yelling and waving his arms, but we were already pulling onto the street. I didn't look back. We didn't go straight to my motel. That would have been the first place he looked. Instead, we drove to a women's shelter Tanya had recommended just outside the city. It was quiet, fenced in, and private. The intake workers were kind and fast. They sat Jenna down with a counselor and got her medical check started. I called Tanya and let her know we had Jenna. She said she'd file for an emergency protective order first thing Monday. That night, Jenna and I sat on the little twin bed in her room at the shelter, holding hands. "He told me if I ever left, he'd take the baby," she whispered. "Said he had more money than me. Said no judge would believe me because I have anxiety, and he'd twist it into something." I nodded. "That's exactly why we're getting a lawyer. And we're going to document everything." We stayed there 4 days. On the 5th day, Craig found us. We'd underestimated him. He must have put a tracker on Jenna's phone or the car. The shelter had security, but Craig showed up yelling at the gate, demanding to see his wife. Said she was sick and unstable. And he was her legal guardian now. They called the police. He was gone by the time they arrived. But now we were exposed. That's when Tanya said the words I hadn't expected to hear. "You need to get her out of South Dakota. Now." I packed everything. Jenna barely slept. She was terrified he'd try something before we left. That night, the shelter moved us to a different location under a different name, while Tanya filed temporary relocation orders through the court. 2 days later, we were on the road. I brought her back home to Nebraska. She stayed in my house, in the guest room she grew up in. I put new locks on all the doors, got a camera for the porch, and gave her a burner phone. Jenna finally smiled again. But we weren't done yet. Because Craig had filed a missing person report. And when that didn't work, he started posting on Facebook that I had kidnapped his wife and was hiding her from needed medical care. Then I got served. He was suing for full custody of the baby once it was born. Said Jenna was mentally unfit. We went to court 3 weeks later. Jenna was 8 months pregnant and had to stand in front of a judge while Craig's lawyer tried to paint her as unstable. He brought printouts of her old therapy visits. He showed texts she'd sent him saying, "I feel crazy sometimes." Like that was proof of something. But we were ready. Tanya presented photo evidence of locks on Jenna's bedroom door, from the outside. She had recordings from the shelter. Testimony from Jenna's counselor. A report from her doctor about bruising found on her ribs. And a video, taken by Jenna without Craig knowing, where he told her, "You'll never leave me. I own you now." The judge granted a temporary restraining order on the spot. But that wasn't the end. Because Craig had money. He wasn't going down without a fight. He started showing up at my house. He stood on the sidewalk watching. He sent letters. He left notes in our mailbox that said things like, "She's my wife. That baby is mine." We called the police every time, but they said he wasn't on the property, so there was nothing they could do yet. But I had a plan. I was done reacting. It was time to strike back. I started digging. Craig wasn't just a controlling husband, he had secrets. I was sure of it. No one acts like that unless they have something to hide. I spent hours online. Old property records, court documents, anything with his name on it. I even paid for a background check through one of those deep search sites. And then I found it. 5 years ago, before he ever met Jenna, Craig was sued by a woman in Kansas City for emotional distress, coercion, and threats of violence. Her name was Alicia Kay. The case was sealed, but the filing was real. And the woman's address? Just a few blocks from Craig's old apartment. I found her on Facebook. Took a shot in the dark and sent her a message. She responded the next day. Her message was short. I've been waiting for someone to ask. I'll talk. But not over messages. Too risky. We arranged a call. Alicia told me Craig had done the same thing to her. He swept in fast, love-bombed her, moved her into his apartment within a month. Then the control started. Phone monitoring, locked doors, no contact with friends. She left him when he pushed her once. Shoved her into a wall when she didn't answer his call quick enough. She pressed charges, but Craig had money and a slick lawyer. The case got sealed in a settlement. She said she never told her story publicly because she was scared of him. But she agreed to write a statement and speak with Tanya if needed. It was the first real crack in his armor. I gave the info to Tanya, and she smiled for the first time in weeks. This is gold, she said. It shows a pattern. He's not just a bad husband. He's dangerous. But we didn't stop there. I remember the day I saw Jenna wince getting into the car after her doctor's appointment. She had told me he'd never hit her. But I started to wonder. So I took her back to the same clinic, but this time, with a new doctor. Someone who wasn't afraid of Craig or his threats. They ran a full exam. She had 3 partially healed rib fractures. The doctor documented everything and reported it immediately under mandatory reporting laws. It triggered a full investigation by Child Protective Services before the baby was even born. Now Craig was under watch. He must have known it too. Because that same week he snapped. It was a Thursday night. Jenna was watching a show on the couch. I was in the kitchen making tea. She was due in 2 weeks, and the baby was getting more active by the day. Then, glass shattered. We both jumped. I ran to the front window. A rock lay on the living room floor. The front pane was broken. I looked outside, and there he was. Craig. Standing under the porch light with both hands in his coat pockets. I dialed 911 while yelling at him through the glass to get off my property. Jenna was sobbing, curled up on the floor. The dispatcher told me to stay calm, help was on the way. Then Craig did something I'll never forget. He pulled out a photo of Jenna, her senior portrait, and burned it with a lighter right there on my lawn. Like a message. Like a threat. The police got there fast. They arrested him for trespassing, vandalism, and violating the restraining order. That got him 2 nights in county jail. But he made bail. Of course he did. It didn't matter though. That night turned everything. Jenna gave birth 3 days later. A beautiful baby boy. 6 pounds 10 ounces? She named him Miles. And Craig wasn't on the birth certificate. But Craig still filed for custody. He claimed Jenna was mentally unstable and that I had brainwashed her. He claimed he was the baby's father and had a constitutional right to see his son. It was all lies. But lies backed with money and manipulation. Tanya was ready. She filed a counterclaim. Emergency sole custody, full restraining order, and a formal petition to block Craig's parental rights on the grounds of abuse, threat to safety, and medical neglect. It would all come down to a final hearing in county family court. 3 months later. I marked it on my calendar with red ink. And that's when I made my final move. Craig had always relied on fear. On money. On Jenna staying silent. But I wasn't afraid of him. And Jenna wasn't silent anymore. And with Alicia ready to testify, the new medical reports, the burned photograph, and dozens of threatening messages Craig stupidly left on voicemails. He had no idea what was coming. The day of the hearing, Jenna sat on the bench beside me in the courthouse, holding Miles in her arms. Her hands were shaking. But her eyes were steady. She wasn't scared anymore. The courtroom was quiet that morning. Just the soft murmur of lawyers flipping through binders, and the faint squeak of the bailiff's shoes as he moved around the benches. Jenna sat beside me holding Miles, wrapped tight in a blue blanket. She looked tired but strong. Craig came in wearing a sharp suit like he was walking into a job interview. His hair slicked back, face calm. He didn't even glance at Jenna or the baby. His lawyer followed close behind, all smug and polished. He really thought he was going to win. The judge was an older woman, stern, glasses halfway down her nose. She read through the case files slowly before speaking. Today we are here to determine custody of the minor child Miles, born to the petitioner Jenna and alleged father Craig. Craig leaned in like he was ready to perform. But Tanya stood first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Your Honor, what we have here is not a custody dispute. It's a case of long-term emotional and physical abuse. My client Jenna has been under threat for over a year. She was isolated during her pregnancy. Locked in a bedroom. Monitored. Tracked. Controlled. And she has the medical reports to prove it. Today, we are not just asking for sole custody, we are asking for a full termination of Craig's parental rights. Craig scoffed. She's mentally unstable. She told me herself she's not okay. She has panic attacks. Sit down, Mr. Craig. The judge snapped. You'll speak when I say so. Tanya kept going. She called the doctor who treated Jenna's fractured ribs. He explained the timing of the injuries. She showed pictures from the shelter. Then, she brought in Alicia. The courtroom went silent when Alicia walked in. Craig went pale. She sat, looked the judge in the eye, and said in a steady voice, "He did the same thing to me. 5 years ago. Everything Jen is going through, I went through first. He never changed. And he never will." Then Tanya played the audio recordings. Voicemails from Craig where he said, "You'll regret this. I'm coming for my son. You can't hide her forever." The judge turned to him. "Mr. Craig, do you deny these recordings are of your voice?" He didn't answer. Then Tanya handed over printed screenshots of Craig's social media rants, where he claimed I had kidnapped Jenna, said women should know their place. And once even commented, "I control what's mine. Period." His lawyer tried to object, but it was too late. The judge had heard enough. She stood. "I find this man to be a clear danger to the child and the mother. I hereby grant Jenna full, permanent custody of the minor. Craig, your parental rights are terminated effective immediately. You will have no contact, no visits, no messages, nothing. A permanent restraining order is issued. You will not go within 500 feet of Jenna, her child, or her mother's residence. Any violation will lead to criminal charges." Craig exploded. He jumped up, shouting, "She's lying! You're all lying! That baby is mine! You can't take him from me!" The bailiff grabbed him before he reached the bench. Craig fought, kicking and yelling, but they dragged him out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Everyone stared. It was over. 3 months later, Craig was arrested again for violating the order. He was found parked down the street from our house, watching with binoculars. This time, the judge didn't go easy. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison for stalking, threats, and contempt of court. Alicia filed a new civil case and won a settlement from him for emotional damages. Jenna joined it. Between the two lawsuits, Craig lost his house and his job. No one wanted to hire him after the story hit the news. His face was everywhere. He became what he feared most, powerless. As for Jenna, she healed. It wasn't quick. There were still nights she woke up sweating. Still days where she triple-checked the locks. But she got stronger. She started going to therapy again. Got a part-time job working remote. And Miles grew up happy, safe, and loved. She didn't name him after anyone. She said he deserved a clean start. I took down the baby gates this spring. He's walking now, barefoot across the hardwood, holding his mother's hand. And me? I learned something too. I used to think love meant standing back, letting your child make their own choices. Now I know. Sometimes, love means stepping forward. Even when it hurts. Even when they say no. Even when someone slams a door in your face and says, "She's mine now." Because she was never his. She was always mine. And I came back with something he never expected, the truth. And I used it to burn his world down. There isn't much more to tell after that. Not because things went quiet, but because peace finally settled into our lives. Craig stayed in prison for the full 18 months. Tried to appeal twice. Denied both times. When he got out, he moved states. I heard through Alicia that he was living in a tiny apartment in Missouri, working under a different name at some warehouse. He keeps a low profile now. The internet never forgets. Anytime he tries to start over, someone finds the articles, the court documents, the mugshot. Employers drop him. Neighbors talk. Landlords look nervous. That's the karma he earned. He wanted control. He ended up alone. Jenna never looked back. After a year of healing, she started taking classes again, online, part-time. She wants to be a counselor for women in crisis. She says, "If someone like Mom hadn't stepped in, I wouldn't have made it. Now I want to be that someone for someone else." She got stronger. She laughs again. She plays peekaboo with Miles and sings him to sleep with the same lullabies I sang to her. And sometimes, when he runs into my arms giggling, I see the little girl I raised all over again. Whole. Safe. Free. I still keep that court order framed inside a drawer in my nightstand. Not out of spite. Not out of hate, but as a reminder that no matter how far someone tries to pull your child away, a mother will always find her way back. And if someone thinks they own your daughter, you remind them exactly who she belongs to: herself, her child, her future. And no man, not even the loudest, most charming, most dangerous, can take that away. He said, "She's mine now." But in the end, she was never his. She was her own, and she chose to come home.